Welcome back, Stacey.
Buongiorno, Eric. Why am I saying it like that? Because I went to Italy. Now, you travel all the time, so you're used to this. For work. Well, that's why I went to Italy. I went to Italy for work.
Okay.
But I had one day where I could do a little sightseeing. I went to work. The office is in Modena, Italy, and I flew into Bologna. And then what I did was that I took a train from Bologna to Florence. For a day.
My friends Bobby and Matt just got back from Florence. It's
lovely there. Right now is the middle of the season, so there is a ton of tourists. Didn't appreciate that. But here's what I want to say. I loved it. I ate my way through the country. I'll be honest with you.
Is the food as good as they say?
It is totally as good as they said. Had the best pizza I've had in my life there. And I can tell you where Vesuvio's in Modena, just throwing that out there. They were amazing. But why am I talking about this right now? Because, I like to say things and make pop culture references. I just want to say that the little girl who grew up in a 1970s, 80s America in the South, making her pop culture references to people in Italy didn't fly. They smiled and nodded at me patiently, but it was then, grazie. Anyway.
Attention. Pop surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to Operating Room 1. Pop surgeons Eric and Stacey, please report to Operating Room 1. Surgery is about to begin.
This is Popperation. I am Eric.
I'm Stacey.
Happy Pride.
It is Pride Month. Happy Pride to all.
So, like we did last year at this
what
time.
says Pride Month more than #Divas?
Divas. Yay. So we did a show in our first season about divas, and we picked 4 of our favorite women who mean a lot and hold a special place in the hearts of little homosexuals everywhere. There's something about this kind of tradition around entertainment that women who get the gay audience, and I forget who said this, but it's like if a woman can get gay men everywhere to fall in love with you, you've got a career for the rest of your life. Very, very loyal fan base. And there's a certain kind of woman that makes a diva. There are a lot of women out there that I love, and I think they're great performers, and as an aficionado of pop culture, I think are just great, and I wouldn't call them divas.
Right.
Because there's something about a diva that's a little, I think the downside, the negative cast that we sometimes put on diva is difficult to work with. I must have nothing but green M&Ms in the bowl.
Well, I think that's the old definition. I think the newer definition is different from that. I think it's more of an over-the-top, strong personality.
Yeah. Someone who imbues their performances with a little bit of camp, but then has the talent to actually live up to that.
Yes.
So it doesn't seem over the top. It just seems that they're just that big and that fabulous.
Yes.
So there's a fabulosity factor that you really need to be a diva. So it's Pride Month. And so like we did last year, we thought we would bring out 4 performers that do mean a lot to the LGBT community. And the first diva that's on our list this time is someone who's primarily known for a little Christmas song and playing a villain on a campy little 60s TV show. We're talking about Eartha Kitt.
Love her so much.
Me too.
Love her so much. Her voice.
Yes.
Her voice is very distinctive.
Nobody sounds like Eartha.
You hear Santa Baby, and I'll tell you, it's hard to listen to other ones. Madonna has done it. And I want to say somebody else has done it. Was it Taylor Swift or somebody else has done Santa Baby?
Kylie Minogue did a Santa Baby. I don't know if that's the one you're thinking. Yeah.
No, somebody else's. But anyway, it's got to be Eartha. Hers is the best.
Hers is the best. I mean, when Madonna did it, I liked it, but Madonna went full Betty Boop.
Correct, which is what gets on my nerves.
To sing this, which it gets on your nerves a little bit, but she didn't try to be Eartha, is my point, because Eartha Kitt has this, interesting kind of a little bit slightly back in her throat kind of style of singing, but it is honestly femme fatale kind of sexy.
But it's her.
But it's her.
When you listen to her talk, that's who she is. She's just being her, whereas Madonna was putting it on. Again, I don't hate it, but my favorite is that.
And Santa Baby is a silly song. It is. I mean, it's just, it's a grown woman who believes that Santa Claus is going to come down her chimney and that maybe I can seduce you. And so even though I've been so good, you just picture her in a very scantily, barely there negligee, waiting to seduce Santa Claus like some kind of, over-the-top vixen.
It's a very, very suggestive song.
But hilarious and really fun.
Right. But but I think she sold it. She sold it like nobody else does.
Yeah.
But she also, she was aware that it was absurd.
Yes, and fun. And she was having fun with it. She was also the third actress in a very, very short-lived television program to take on the role of Catwoman.
Yes.
Now, it's interesting. Her name was Eartha Kitt long before she became Catwoman. So I don't know if that was... And she already kind of had this thing where she would purr occasionally. Yes. She purred better than either Lee Merriweather or Julie Newmar. The purr that she, gave to Catwoman was great. And she was fantastic. She's my favorite of the three.
I agree.
I wish she'd had the role from the beginning.
Lee Merriweather.
Yeah.
But no. The best Catwoman was Eartha Kitt.
Yeah. I wish he'd had it from the beginning. And I don't know if... Who knows? I don't know if racial politics in the 60s had anything to do with that. Because there's always this, in the best iterations of Batman and Catwoman, and I'm also thinking of Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer, there is this flirtation between the two. Kind of, that's always, she's not just a strictly evil like the Joker or the Penguin. Yeah. Because of the gender dynamics there's always something a little interesting going on. But she did a lot more than just play Catwoman and sing Santa Baby. She made her first big splash on a Broadway show called The New Faces of 1952. Now, I'm not aware. Were there like the new faces of fill-in-the-blank year for years on Broadway or something?
I think so.
Anyway, it was just a variety show where it was just like, here's a bunch of people you've never heard of, and come listen to them do their thing. She sang a song in The New Faces of 1952 called Monotonous. Have you ever heard of this song?
I have not.
Monotonous is hysterical. It is just basically a song about I'm so bored. It's kind of like Madeline Kahn's I'm Tired from Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
But it's basically she's saying life is so monotonous, and yet the choruses are all about all of these exciting things that are happening to her that anyone in the world would think this is the most exciting life you could possibly live, and the chorus is monotonous. I'm just so bored with how many men just fall over themselves loving me, and how many. And one of the last things she says, and by the way, Ike likes me. Which, if you're not familiar with the I Like Ike Eisenhower campaign button, might not be as funny to you. But it's just, all about how glamorous and special I am and just how boring it all is. Her debut album came out a little while later. C'est si bon was the first French language thing that we heard her do. She spoke French fluently and so did a lot of work in French. Her other thing, which you really ought to YouTube this, is her song I Want to Be Evil. And I Want to Be Evil is all about how I really am just a very, very, very good girl, but I want to be bad. But sometimes, it's not quite as out there as it could have been. It is a product of the 50s. One of the things about being bad was I want to be late to the theater and I want to step on everyone's toes as I get to my seat. I want to be that bad. Like, that's really bad.
Right.
She was in a couple of movies. She did a movie called St. Louis Blues with Nat King Cole and actually had an Oscar nomination playing a prostitute in Ana Lucasta with Sammy Davis Jr. I
don't know any of that.
I saw the preview. It was enough. I didn't need to see this movie. It didn't look like a very good, it didn't look like it aged well. And yet, Oscar nomination. So, I mean, she could act. She was a good actor. Something that happened to her that really kind of turned her career, hard left turn. I think about what happened last year with Kathy Griffin.
Yes.
And that big, the photo she took with the severed head of Donald Trump. In this one, there was a scandal when Eartha Kitt was invited to a lunch with Lady Bird Johnson to hear, what people thought about whatever. And apparently Eartha Kitt was an entertainer and she was well respected. And Lady Bird was, for some reason, interested in what Eartha Kitt thought. And the unspoken rule was you're supposed to stand up and be very nice and very, very deferential to Lady Bird Johnson, and that was not Eartha's way. She stood up and basically said, you're sending the best kids that we have to Vietnam. No wonder there's all this crime, because the kids that you're leaving behind are, the ones who are causing all this trouble. And it ended up being, it started off as why is the crime rate rising? And it ended up being this whole thing against the Vietnam War. Well, she was blacklisted immediately.
Looking at the quote, it wasn't as dramatic or scandalous looking as Kathy Griffin. That was horrifying looking. So
our bar has been raised on what offends us.
You're exactly right. But basically, she said the children of America are not rebelling for no reason. They're not hippies for no reason at all. They're rebelling against something. And she said, you send the best of this country to be shot and maimed. No wonder the kids rebel and take pot. And apparently, it reportedly caused Mrs. Johnson to burst into tears and, as you said, got her blacklisted for a while.
Over a decade.
And she went to Europe.
Yeah, she went to Europe and continued to do a lot of work there because they're used to Americans overreacting about things, and they'll take our entertainers when we don't want them.
They do it. It's Josephine Baker.
Yeah, so she ended up she still ended up getting a lot of work. There was a documentary that was made about her life, and it's this great scene where I was kind of looking up old clips of Eartha Kitt, and the guy who's interviewing her said, "Well, do you ever want to be in another relationship again with a man? Do you want to get married?" And she kind of said, "Why? For what?" And she said, "Well, you don't seem like the kind of person who compromises very much." Because why should I? Well, wouldn't you compromise for a man? And she just bursts out laughing. It is just, it's like it's the most ridiculous question, which I think at the time that was not a ridiculous question, but she knew enough. She was ahead of her time enough to know that is a ridiculous statement.
At the time, the fact that she laughed was ridiculous.
Yeah. Of
course you would give up whatever the heck you thought your ambitions were for a man, because that should be what you're doing.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is my children actually know who she is.
Really?
My children know who she is because she did voiceover work. The last 10, 12 years of her life, she did a lot of animated cartoon voiceovers.
Yeah, The Emperor's New Groove,
which is one of our favorites, and we pull that out every once. She plays Yzma, and she's absolutely hysterical. I think that sometimes voice actors aren't given enough credit. You have to understand that they have to, without you seeing them, put all of that acting into just their voice. And then the cartoonists, they do that first, and then the artists actually draw around that.
Yeah.
Holy crap, she's funny. Have you seen it?
I've not, but
oh my God, you have to see it.
Okay, I'll look at it because I love her,
it's
so
hysterical.
I'd love to see.
It's a stupid thing. David Spade, Patrick Warburton. It's hysterical.
Okay.
And John Goodman.
Okay.
Those are the big four. And it's one of the most delightful, The Emperor's New Groove, it's one of the most delightful animations. But Eartha Kitt made that, she takes it to the next level.
Well, in what you're saying, you're right. I mean, you do have to give an entire performance that just comes through this one tool, that an actor has a lot of tools, that their face, their body, their voice. When you just say you get nothing but your voice, you have to do a whole performance with just one of your tools. And I think when you're really good, your job is also to inspire the artists who come after you.
Correct. So The Emperor's New Groove, and they made a TV series off of it called The Emperor's New School. She won 2 Daytime Emmy Awards.
Great.
For that.
That's awesome. The other awards she won 2 Tony Awards. When she finally got over this blacklist and came back to the U.S., she did a show in 1978 called Timbuktu! !
I see that. It has an exclamation point. Kind of like Popperation.
Exactly. Exactly. We shouldn't really make fun of Timbuktu's exclamation point since we used one too, even though Facebook won't let us put it on our page. Anyway, and then again in 2000, she did a musical with Toni Collette called The Wild Party, and got a Tony nomination for that as well. So won the award for Timbuktu, got a nomination for The Wild Party. And in 2008, she left us. So 10 years she's been gone. But still,
it doesn't seem like that long. I feel like, but again, time is so weird.
As you get older, time warps in very weird ways.
Because I feel like she could have gone even longer. Certainly, she could have in voiceover work. She won posthumously won a 3rd Emmy for doing Wonder Pets, another voiceover
Interesting. Yeah. Hadn't heard of any of these.
Wonder Pets, I've heard of it. I've never seen it. But
I think it's great that your kids know who Eartha Kitt is.
Yeah, that's they totally know who she is. And that's what's really good. Now they have seen some of the since then, because I remember going, okay, that's Eartha Kitt. She played Catwoman because that's who I knew her from the old Batman. So we YouTubed that, and so they know her now from that. But I mean, when you think about it, she was born in 1927. Yeah. I mean, she lived a nice long life. She did. She has a daughter.
She did. Kit.
And Kit, which is...
Her name is not Kit Kit.
No.
Because she took her dad's name. Yeah. But
she left a legacy of some fun songs and then some other, acting work.
Yeah, and what we didn't mention in her whole kind of biography is that she came from a hard scrabble beginning. I mean, this was not, she did not have an easy entree.
Orangeburg County, South Carolina.
Yeah.
For an African-American kid in 1927, that's not going to be an easy life.
And a biracial kid from a single mom. So, so her dad was a white man somewhere who I don't think she ever found out who her dad was. She looked and looked and looked. And one of the last things that happened is that, they finally did a DNA test or something, and it was inconclusive as to who her father was. She never knew who her dad was. And, she came from pretty hard beginnings and, clawed her way into kind of the hearts and minds of gay men everywhere. But she had such attitude. I mean, and in a good way, that kind of the really positive connotations of diva attitude. I
think now the definition of diva usually also includes joie de vivre.
Yeah.
Just a joy of living, of life. You take the stuff. So you got kicked out of the White House. So you got blacklisted in America. You go to Europe. Just finding solutions to problems that might take somebody else down all the way, but you go above it. Or
at
make
least,
it even better.
At the very least, confidence. The really kind of knowing that you are worth something, and that no one and nothing that anyone says about you is going to bring you down. That kind of that spine kind of makes a diva.
I agree.
As well. A couple of years ago, more than a couple of years ago, a long time ago. Because it was a CD, and I haven't bought a CD in a really long time. But I bought a CD of the best of Eartha Kitt, and all I'd ever heard her sing was Santa Baby.
Oh, okay.
And I was really just kind of intrigued by what would this be. Well, Monotonous was on this CD. C'est si bon. I Want to Be Evil. Lilac Wine. There's a Turkish ballad that's on there that she sang in a Broadway show at some point. Really, really great music. Clever. Really clever lyrics, and she knows how to sing a clever lyric because she's a smart lady.
Smart. And I think that is also something that comes out in this whole diva and that confidence you were talking about. She was very, very smart and made, but she was going to stand up for who she was and what she believed no matter what.
Yeah. And smart and sexy at the same time.
God,
and by sexy, I mean in the 50s, sexual. I mean, you believed that this woman, was... All
you gotta do is turn on Catwoman. People.
Really? Yeah.
People.
But she was both of those things. In a time when any woman who dared to be sexual could have very easily been sidelined as just some cheap whore that you don't need to listen to. She was like, no. I have got a brain in my head, and let me tell you what is what. And so for that alone,
she had all of it.
Stunning.
Actually. She just had all of it.
And then we're also talking about a black woman who was who did all the things that she did in the 50s and 60s.
Yes.
Which just makes her even more amazing. There's so many reasons.
She lasted a really long time.
So many reasons why we love Eartha.
So,
we're going to take a break. We've got 2 more divas after the break, another diva after our second break, and then we'll wrap up this episode of Popperation. I'm Eric.
I'm Stacey.
We'll be right back.
So we're back with diva number 2.
Oh! That was my Cher impersonation. Did you like it? Well, that's kind of okay. So have you seen that? Okay, have you seen the scene between her and Jack on the old Will and Grace, the Will and Grace that was years and years and years ago, where she meets Jack in the store?
I don't remember it. I know I saw it.
Okay, so this if she was already there, let's be honest, but this really kind of, absolutely cemented her. She knew about her gay divahood clearly when she did this scene. Jack is running around with a Cher Barbie, and he insists that his Barbie doll gets her own seat at restaurants, and it's being crazy, and Will and Grace are being driven nuts. Well, he turns around after causing a scene in a restaurant because his Cher Barbie doll needs its own seat, and there is Cher, and he immediately recognizes her as a Cher impersonator, and so treats her like a drag queen. And when she does, something that, he says, well, prove to me that you're Cher. And so she sings If I Could Turn Back Time just a little bit. And he's like, no, it's Tome. And so he does the whole totally over the top Cher impersonation. And then she slaps him and says, snap out of it, i.e. Moonstruck. And then he knows it's really Cher and he's dazzled. It is hysterical. It's just a great little moment where it's like, yeah, Cher is a diva. Gay men love her. Let's make fun of it for a moment. And her outfit was sublime.
What's interesting, and I guess it's probably true of most divas, you don't set out to be that icon. That's not your goal. Your goal is to succeed doing something that you really care about.
I tell you, entertainment is a hard enough career as it is.
Her trip to diva-dom was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, she's crazy. When you go back to when she started, back with Sunny, she met him when she was 16.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they met when she was 14, I think. Mm-hmm. And then we're together at 16 and got married when I think she was 18.
Yeah.
That's a life already.
Yeah.
Already. You're 18 years old and you've already lived this life and you're married to this old guy. I mean, it's crazy.
Yep.
And amazing. And you talk about, again, survivorship. Divas have that whole thing, survivorship.
Yeah. So the first thing that she did that you might have heard, although you had no idea that it was Cher ever before, she actually sang backup for Be My Baby by the Ronettes.
I did know.
In 1963.
I did know she worked for Phil Spector doing some stuff, so that doesn't surprise me that she did that. I didn't know she did that particular one.
So she was not a member of the Ronettes, but she was on that recording. And this happened a lot. Diana Ross would do a thing, and they'd get just a random backup singers, and they would release it as Diana Ross and the Supremes.
Yeah.
And Mary Wilson's like, what the fuck? Yeah. So that happened quite a bit. But she was one of those backup singers. And while working for Phil Spector, she met Sonny Bono. And then Sonny and Cher got married, and some of their hits were, I Got You, Babe. They did the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour from 1971 to 74, which I tell you what, if you go back and look at some outtakes of that was some funny shit. They were good.
It was absurd. I remember watching the Sonny and Cher show. Again, I was young, but I loved their opening monologue because she would just sit there and just lambast him with line after line, usually about him being short.
Yeah.
And I just laughed and laughed.
Yeah.
I thought it was hysterical. But again, she was honing her timing.
Yeah.
And she was really, really good at it. And he had to know that she was the reason that he was a success.
Oh, sure.
He had tried before to be a success just as Sonny, and he couldn't do it. And then,
Sonny Bono as a solo act just holds no allure for anyone.
He was never a good actor either. I
No.
mean, sadly, God, rest in peace. But that just wasn't who he was. But he recognized talent.
He was a great foil for her.
He was a great foil for her.
Yeah, so he did work well there. But while that was happening, she was also, her solo music career had already started. So Bang Bang, My Lover Shot Me Down, and Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves.
Now, people are surprised when you hear the song "What's It All About, Alfie" from the movie Alfie.
Michael Caine.
That's right. Michael Caine was in that. Have you ever seen that?
No.
He was. That's an amazing. He's amazing to watch in that. If you want to see old school Michael Caine, Alfie is an amazing movie to watch.
Okay.
It was really, really interesting. But so Dionne Warwick had the hit, but she didn't sing it in the movie. Cher did.
Really?
Yes. So you can find the Cher version, but Dionne remade it, and she's the one everybody's like, oh, Dionne Warwick sang that. Not in the movie, she didn't. Cher sang it in the movie. Oh,
interesting.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So she divorced Sonny in 75. So they were not married for all that long, about a decade. Couple of kids, right? They had Chaz.
She just had one.
Just Chaz?
She just had Chastity. At the time, Chastity.
Chastity, who is now Chaz. Couldn't work for a while because of contractual obligations that connected her to Sonny. So she actually didn't record for about 4 years. And again, that's a thing where, when you're a young woman in entertainment, being out of the spotlight for 4 years could sink a lot of careers. Obviously, it's like how long has Cher been in our consciousness? 4 years is like nothing. So she started to record again in 1979. And then she kind of made her way into acting. And actually, it started on Broadway.
Well, it started back on the Sonny and Cher show.
Well, sure.
She was doing those vignettes. She was doing those little skits. And again, I say honing her timing and learning how you act.
Yeah.
Because they'd have these guest stars on who were actors.
Mm-hmm.
And she was learning from them.
Yeah, you're right. This is not, she didn't begin acting, after there was, but that was a variety show and there were little kind of moments.
Correct.
But it was working an audience and it was kind of getting. Now, we had talked just a little while ago about West Side Story because, Steven Spielberg's doing his remake. Did you ever see her one-woman West Side Story from the Sonny and Cher comedy hour?
No.
She plays every role. They basically just filmed it so that she plays every single role in a very miniaturized. Really? Oh, it's fantastic.
Interesting.
It's so great.
That existed.
It's so great. But she went on to Broadway after a while and did a little show called Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Jimmy Dean. Now, Stacey, why does everyone who's ever done community theater ever know Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Jimmy Dean?
Because it's always done.
Why is it always done? Because it's all women.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Because community theaters need like heavy female cast. So Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Jimmy Dean has great roles for 7 women and 1 young guy.
And so that's, you totally. Community theater does that because there are no men in community theater.
And so it was before Steel Magnolias. We had Come Back to the Five and Dime.
Correct.
Have you ever done it?
I tried.
Oh, you didn't. What did you want to do?
You want to tell me the story? I'll tell you the story. Here, and that's why when you bring that up, my back gets up a little bit because I auditioned for it.
Okay.
And I auditioned for the Sandy Dennis role.
Okay.
Now I had seen the movie, but my deal when I'm an actor is that I don't want to do what the actress in the movie did.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring something new to it.
Yep.
So I went and I did a different interpretation of Sandy Dennis. I didn't want to do, or that character, I didn't want to do her character.
Yeah, Mona.
I didn't particularly care for her rendition anyway, but I was doing it. I did not get cast, but I did go see the show. The bitch who did get cast literally did Sandy Dennis as Mona.
Which means you had a director with no imagination.
Correct.
Okay.
Which is why we're not going to mention names. But I was so angry because I sat there and I went, if I wanted to watch this performance, I'd put in the damn movie.
Yeah.
But I have a little bit of an issue with that.
Okay. So ironically, I have done Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Jimmy Dean, because there's one male role in the entire thing.
Yep.
And it's a flashback character who's only ever seen in flashback. And I had a great time on that set. It was just me and 7 women. And, that's like a dream set for me. Yeah. So
she had married. Now, right after she divorced from Sonny, it wasn't, and I mean like either days or weeks, she was married to Greg Allman.
Yeah.
That was her second husband with whom she did have a son.
Yes.
So then at this point, she's had a daughter with Sonny and a son with Greg. So that's where she was on this.
So, Greg Allman from the Allman Brothers Band.
Correct.
Yeah. So she did the movie then of Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Jimmy Dean, which was the entire, well, not the entire cast of the stage show. Actually, Cher got a much bigger role in the movie version because in the play, Mona and Sissy, who was Cher's character, and Joanne play themselves in the present day, and then different actors play them in the flashback. Sandy Dennis and Cher got to play themselves in flashback as well, so they got to play those 2 roles. But everything else about the movie, same cast. Kathy Bates played Stella May.
I forgot she was in that.
So she's in that, and it's fun to see her, back before anybody knew who Kathy Bates was. She followed that on almost immediately with Silkwood. In 1983, got an Oscar nomination.
That was huge. That was a huge. I remember when it came out, and it was huge for the story and the Meryl Streep part and all of that. But Cher got so much play because this is one of the first mainstream movies with just a likable lesbian.
Yeah. So she played a lesbian character. Dolly Pellicker was the name of her character, who was in love with Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep was not gay in this story, so it was an unrequited romance there on Cher's part. I heard a story. I don't know if it's true, that Cher went to the premiere of this movie, and everyone sat down and got very quiet to watch this very serious movie. And as it started, the name Meryl Streep came up on screen and disappeared, and the name Kurt Russell came up on screen and disappeared. And then, it's a very short little name, Cher, came up and the audience laughed. Because they were there to see a very serious entertainment.
And
Cher, who is best known for the Comedy Hour and, just a bunch of silly
Gypsies,
stuff.
Tramps, and Thieves.
And Cher was in the audience listening to people laugh when her name came up. But she just sat there, watched the movie with everybody else. At the end of the movie, she stood up to leave and got a standing ovation. People were so amazed by.
I can also see that being just a nice publicity story, but I can see that happening. I think because she did surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
And it set the stage for the rest of her career.
Yeah. So Mask was the next big one that she made. Everyone expected her to get an Oscar nomination. She didn't, but she was the mother of a boy with facial disfigurement, and it was about their
Eric
struggle.
Stoltz.
Yeah, under a lot of prosthesis.
Of
and then 1987 came around, and 1987 was Cher's year at the movies. 3 huge movies came out. Suspect, which I just saw last week because I hadn't seen it since 1987, and I just wanted to be reminded again. The Witches of Eastwick, which is silly in a lot of ways, but
it's fun, and it had a fun cast.
Based on a very popular novel, and it's these 3 women who dabble in witchcraft more as a hobby than anything else, and then end up bringing a demon in the form of Jack Nicholson in the movie to town. Very fun. And then, her Oscar moment, and I think her best performance of all time.
Probably.
Moonstruck.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love this movie so much. First of all, this is where I learned who Olympia Dukakis was.
Me too.
Who is just...
And apparently she'd been around forever, but I didn't know.
In the theater mostly.
I know, but I didn't know.
But yeah, and amazing, as the mom. So good. Good.
That's a good movie all the way around.
Yeah.
The weakest, you know what the weakest thing is? Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. Who wasn't terrible.
No, he wasn't terrible. He had some weird choices he made, and it was weird that the director let it go, but... no, he wasn't awful, but he was the weakest link. It was a really good cast.
It was a really phenomenal.
Now, speaking of which, I do want to. Now, we just mentioned Mask, and I said Eric Stoltz played her son, and that was like in 1985. By 1987, she had romantic relationships with Val Kilmer and Tom Cruise. Hockey player Ron Duguay. I think that's how you pronounce it. Bon Jovi guitarist Richie Sambora.
Remember that.
And then ended up with Rob Camilletti, the 18-year-old who was in that video she did for a while. But what she also did have a little bit of a romantic relationship with Eric Stoltz.
Because that's hot. Ew. playing your mother, and then like in between takes, let's get frisky in the trailer.
That's you. I just wanted to throw that in there. I wanted to ground everybody.
So right after she wins an Oscar, she starts recording this album, which ended up being her big rock and roll album, including the album was called Heart of Stone, came out in '89. Featured I Found Someone and If I Could Turn Back Time, where she was wearing that next to nothing unitard that was mostly see-through, except for one little V-shaped thing that covered her nipples and her crotch, and where she straddled a cannon on a big Navy ship and sang this song. I mean, and I say all this to say I love you, Cher, and that is ridiculous. Yep. It's ridiculous, but it's fun. I mean, that's, and so... that was 1989, and then less than a decade later, it was 1998. All of a sudden, she's a disco star. Believe comes out, and we hear, Believe and Strong Enough and all of those songs that are kind of, so she has had a folk career, a rock and roll career, a disco career, and then made all these movies, one nomination, one award.
In 1990.
Right. So other films of hers, Mermaids. Tea with Mussolini, which I always forget that she's in because I'm so distracted by Judi Dench and Maggie Smith and Joan Plowright. It just seems like, it's an old British lady movie. And in the middle of it all is Cher, who's actually fantastic in this movie. Plays an American, so doesn't try to do the accent or anything. And then a movie that, like, the critics hated, but all of my friends just adore, and I've seen it a number of times, probably against my better judgment, but I enjoy it every time I watch it, Burlesque.
I knew you were going to say that.
With Christina Aguilera.
Oh, yes, I know.
And the funniest thing about burlesque, there's a scene that I love just because it is a cliche, but it's just so funny that they just went there, is that, Stanley Tucci is in this movie playing his gay assistant.
I love him so much.
He just went off the set of The Devil Wears Prada and just walked right into the set of this one, playing like the little gay guy who's next to the diva. And at one point he says to her, "We have to run through your song." And she goes, "Ugh, do we have to?" Like, it's such a burden that she has to, sing something. And he's like, "Yeah, it's our only chance." She's like, "All right." And she puts down her bag and she kind of flumps onto the stage and then sings this song that is just like, she gives it 110% because she's fucking Cher, and it's fabulous.
Yep.
And actually, she only sings twice in this movie. Christina Aguilera does all the other singing.
It's Christina's movie.
It really is.
It's supposed to be Christina's movie.
But Cher got top billing because she's Cher and she can open a movie. And Christina had never opened a movie before. It's fine. I mean, it's silly is what it is. It's just a silly movie. Kristen Bell, she's in it as well.
I forgot she was in it.
She's the mean girl.
Yeah, she is. She is.
And, the whole thing is only Cher sings. Everyone else has to lip sync. So of course they get to a point where Christina Aguilera's record, Kristen Bell rips out her music so she's there in silence. And of course the microphone is working, because why wouldn't you have a working microphone on stage with a bunch of lip sync artists? But anyway, she takes to the microphone and starts doing her Christina Aguilera thing. And suddenly she's the big star of the burlesque.
There was nothing cliche about that movie.
Oh, nothing. No, not a bit. No. Silly, stupid, fun. It's a fun movie.
But I will say, it's one of those where it's like diva and then diva in training.
Yes.
Because that's where Christina's going.
Right. And then of course there's a movie where Cher teaches her how to contour while she's in the makeup. But it's that whole "I am passing the torch now to you." Yeah. And it was, for a whole bunch of people who, whether you went to see the movie to see Cher or whether you went to see Christina, or maybe you're a Gen Xer like me and so you're right in between them and kind of went for both, Dumb was never going to win an Oscar for anything, but boy, is it like a little slice of homosexual heaven right there.
Well, there are two movies that she actually turned down, that she was offered the leading roles. One in The War of the Roses.
The Kathleen Turner role?
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting. She turned that down.
All right.
And there's another one, Thelma and Louise.
Really?
And I don't know which part.
Oh, I bet probably the Susan Sarandon part, don't you think?
Maybe the Susan Sarandon part. Yeah, probably. But yeah. Think about how either one of those movies would have been changed like crazily with her in there.
I tell you, I like Kathleen Turner a lot, but I think I might have liked War of the Roses more.
No, I don't think I would have liked it more. I don't think I would have liked it ever.
Yeah, it's not
I didn't care for it at all.
It's a dark comedy, heavy emphasis on dark.
Dark, yeah,
very dark.
It wasn't clever enough for me for it to really come up to the dark comedy.
Yeah,
as really
see, but I think here's what I think. I think that Cher would have looked at the script and she would have said, "Where can I make this funny?" As opposed to Kathleen Turner, which went to that serious actress. I want to be, where can I make it darker and where can I make it more real?
Maybe. I think it was a wise choice either way, because War of the Roses
for her to turn
not
it down.
A hit. I think that it was a wise choice for her to turn both.
War of the Roses was mostly notable because Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner were back together again after Romancing the Stone.
And Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all three of them.
Yeah.
That was the whole deal.
Yeah.
But for Thelma and Louise, I it wouldn't have necessarily been bad. It probably would have been good.
It would have been fine.
Very different.
Would have been different.
But I think that it was good with the cast that it had.
Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon are so... I can't imagine anyone else doing it because they were both so good. And Cher is a marvelous performer, and I'm sure she would have made either one of those roles work for her.
And, and it does. We go back to the divaness of it. I would say that in the way that we're talking about divas, none of those women that we just said, Kathleen Turner, Gina Davis, or Susan Sarandon, are divas in that way. And so this would be putting a diva in there, and it's one of those, you can't contain a diva. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Whereas Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis, but they can get lost in their roles. Uh-huh. Even in Moonstruck, Cher was wonderful, don't get me wrong, but she was still always Cher.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's almost, I remember how shocked I was at the beginning of that movie because you see her with a lot of gray hair. But when she finally decides she's going to take this date seriously, and she goes, and it's a big thing, she gets her hair done, and the beautician's just falling all over herself with delight. She gets rid of the grays. When she shows up outside of the opera, with that dress and those heels and that mane of black hair. I mean, she is all Cher all day.
And she's the most stunning thing ever.
Beautiful. Just gorgeous. Cher is currently on her 127th farewell tour. Which she now it's just called Classic Cher. It's coming back to National Harbor. Like, she was just here last year. She's coming back. She's still on the road. She's still doing her thing.
Which is
Packs
crazy.
the houses.
Which is crazy.
I love
for
it.
her to still be touring.
I love it.
Because it's hard. It's really hard.
It is hard.
But I think you have to like it. It's like John Bon Jovi still tour. It's these Rolling Stones still tour. These guys, there's something in it.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure she's very well taken care of on her tours. I'm sure she's comfortable on tour, much more so than she was when she was starting out.
Oh yeah, it's a different world.
And yet, 127 costume changes for every show. I mean, and audiences love it, and she's making the money. So good for her. Why do we love Cher? Why don't we love Cher?
Because she's what we aspire to be.
Yeah.
She is a survivor, like everything, a couple of marriages, lots of relationships.
Yep.
I think, chastity going to having all of her gender identity and all of those issues, which are now in the forefront. They weren't when Chaz was going through all this and trying to get through, first realizing that at the time she was homosexual. That was one. I remember when that happened, and Cher it was kind of weird, and then she was very supportive. And then when it moved on to, well, not only that,
not only am I attracted to women, but I am a man.
I'm a man.
Yeah.
Cher dealt with aplomb that a lot of parents wouldn't.
Yeah.
And she didn't sweep it under the carpet. And I think so. We aspire to be who she is, which is, I am who I am. Take me or leave it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to succeed. Mic drop. That's why I like her.
And I love her for all of those reasons, and just because it's like it's written in the handbook when you become gay. It's like the adoration of Cher is one of our 10 commandments.
You know what else is? You gotta love Liza.
You don't have to love Liza.
I think you do. Everybody, all gay men do.
I do. So if you're playing a game of Who's Your Diva, absolutely no question. The first diva I will always mention is Liza Minnelli. Liza Minnelli is my diva. Now, Liza Minnelli is, by a lot of gay men, will look at her as, well, she's Judy Garland's daughter. And they'll all say, Judy was better. Judy was different. Liza did not aspire to have Judy's career, and she didn't try to have Judy's career. And she doesn't have all of Judy's gifts, but she has gifts of her own that Judy did not have. And so to me, they are two very separate performers.
I don't think it's fair to compare them. And one reason is they're different generations.
Yeah.
And there was a different society that was going on when the two of them were up and coming. So I don't think that's fair. It's never fair to compare a daughter to a mother. That's just not right. Although Kate Hudson, and Goldie Hawn, I do all the time.
But you're right. Very different. So Liza, primarily she's well known for Cabaret. Made in the early 70s, won her an Oscar. Liza with a Z, which is one of the big, when variety shows on TV were a big deal, she made one of the better variety shows you've ever seen. Wild Times at Studio 54, there's still a lot of jokes around Liza and drugs. And she was very, open about the fact that she was going into rehab several different times. She did have several, issues around
drugs
addiction.
Drugs and alcohol are still an issue.
As with her mom. Her mom, struggled with the same thing. Now, her mom was fed all of these medications by the studio, at the time.
But then when Liza was up and coming, they were just really readily available.
Yeah. Exactly. And, of course, she's most famous for being Judy Garland's daughter, which, again, she's proud of the fact that she is Judy Garland's daughter. She always speaks of her mom with just a lot of respect and always reminds you that her dad was also a pretty big deal as well. Vincente Minnelli was one of the best filmmakers of his generation. And some of her first appearances anywhere were with her mom in concert. There's a great old album of Judy and Liza at the London Palladium where there really is a double bill. Judy sings some songs by herself. Liza sings some songs by herself, and then they sing together. And Judy Garland said she never had to work so hard in her life as when sharing the stage with her daughter, because her daughter, what her daughter has even more so than Judy is the belt. She can belt out a note, and it is so powerful.
At that time, Judy's voice was not, it wasn't in her prime, so she couldn't. But again, two different. Now their voices sound lovely together, but they're two different singers,
Very different.
And different personalities. And I think, Liza, they both had presence, but I think maybe Judy had to work harder to I get what she's saying in that Liza
Judy was an old pro at that time, and Liza was in her teens, and so that also says something about the natural talent that Liza had. I think Judy sang "Over the Rainbow," and had this really deep, lovely voice in those smaller kinds of softer, very emotionally heartfelt kinds of songs. And Liza never had that, but what Liza did was she had the belt.
Yes, I agree.
And she also could work a wry, clever lyric in a way that I think at least rivaled her mom, if not, went beyond that. So you think about some of the sexy kind of stuff around Mine Hair in Cabaret. She knew how to sell a suggestive lyric with just enough of a wink to not make it just dirty, but really kind of bring it to life. She wanted to be a dancer when she was younger. All she wanted to do was dance. She grew up around showbiz. She really said, I did not want to be the next Judy Garland, because Judy Garland was Judy Garland, and she didn't really want to compete with her mom. She loved dancing, and so that was the thing that she said, I do want to go into showbiz, but she would have been just as happy to be in the chorus line. Of course, she was discovered by these two songwriters, Kander and Ebb, who ended up writing most of the songs that she is famous for, were written by these two. They had a flop that showed up on Broadway in 1965 called Flora the Red Menace, and it's about a young girl who gets mixed up with the Communist Party, because that sounds like a musical you want to go to.
I have no words there. There's nothing about that title that's, even if it was 1952, what?
Flora the Red Menace.
I can't.
She was 19 years old and she won a Tony Award.
Well, she won an Oscar for Cabaret.
Yeah, very soon after.
So, she got these fairly quickly.
Yeah. Her early movies, Charlie Bubbles, which I never saw, 1967 with Albert Finney, The Sterile Cuckoo, which I did see. She got an Oscar nomination for that, where she plays a socially awkward girl who just this love story, and this really annoying song that she doesn't sing, but just plays throughout the entire movie. It's very of its time, 1968, 69 kind of a thing, where it's like they wanted to do like a Simon and Garfunkel thing, like The Graduate, where they play this, but it's one song that gets played over and over and over, and it was like, oh, just let Liza sing a damn song. So bad. And then Tell Me That You Love Me, Junie Moon. I don't know if you ever saw that.
No, I never saw that.
She plays someone with a certain amount of facial disfiguration in that too, so under some makeup, and it's three people, and one of them's a homosexual. And then there's this boy that she's kind of in love with, and there's her, and they're just kind of making their way in the world, and they're all different, and it's just, you got to be you. Smaller movies, but again, she did get an Oscar nomination for The Sterile Cuckoo, and then won the Oscar for Cabaret. Liza with a Z came out the next year, and then she started making flop after flop after flop.
Well, I will tell you, I did see Lucky Lady.
Okay.
Which is with Burt Reynolds.
Yep.
It was awful.
Okay.
New York was, I believe that's James Caan.
Robert De Niro.
Oh, Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro. I did see that one.
James Caan?
Okay, no. And directed by Martin Scorsese. Okay, so New York, here's why, and A Matter of Time, which I didn't see.
I didn't either.
Okay. New York, 1977, everyone thought it would be a big hit. It should have been a big hit. Liza Minnelli was still kind of hot. She was a recent Oscar winner. Robert De Niro was an up-and-comer. Mm-hmm. Martin Scorsese was the director. And basically what New York wanted to be was something that looked like an old movie, was made like an old movie, about a young singer and a young saxophone player who fall in love right after the end of World War II. And so the music was kind of that, 40s era jazzy stuff. And it starts off, it just kind of sends you, if you love old movies like that, and if you were a big fan of Judy Garland's career, you would have fallen right into this and went, But then the next half of the movie, it kind of shows how tough show business is. He becomes an abusive husband. They end up, having a child, but then getting a divorce. And it's just, their lives kind of go on this different turn. And basically it's saying the old movies were lying to you. People always had trouble. Like this is more like what real life was really like. And so it wanted to make this point. Now,
didn't want that point.
People didn't want that. Well, they might have, they might not have. A lot of gritty movies were made back in the 70s when this was made. The problem that New York had was it came out, I think, pretty much exactly the same time as a little movie called Star Wars.
Yeah, it did.
And so Star Wars became that. And I think it actually had the same opening weekend as Star Wars.
That's bad luck.
Which no one expected that movie to be this huge thing, but it was. And so this one is technically a flop because it didn't make a whole lot of money. But it's well regarded. Her performance is fantastic. So I don't think it's the same thing as Lucky Lady. They're both in the flop category because they didn't make a whole lot of money.
Lucky Lady was not a good script, if I recall, and Lucky Lady refers to a boat that was named for Lucky
Lady. And then she kind of had a comeback.
Huge comeback.
She made The Act, which was a Broadway show, won a Tony Award, another Tony in 1977. And basically The Act is she plays a character, but it's pretty much a one-woman show because she's doing... she's on stage performing as this character and telling stories about her life, which was not Liza's life, but she sang every single song, and basically it was her on stage, and she was amazing, and she won a Tony Award, and then she was Dudley Moore's love interest in Eartha.
And that's what I was saying. That was huge. It put her back on the map. It put Dudley Moore on the map because he was part of a comedy team, and it separated him. And so that was huge. I remember that. That was so big. And then later on when she did Arthur 2 on the Rocks, that was a mistake.
It was probably a mistake for all of them. But, Arthur doesn't age well.
No, it doesn't. No.
Because what it's making fun of is really not funny. We know now that it's not funny. Basically, Arthur is a drunk playboy. And Liza Minnelli is the girl from the wrong side of the tracks that he falls in love with.
When we talked about remakes, and we said this was one that doesn't age. You can't redo it, and they tried to redo it, and it was a bad idea.
And if you're going to try to replace John Gielgud with anyone, it might as well be Helen Mirren. That's brilliant in terms of its forward thinking, but that wasn't its problem. First of all, Russell Brand is not nearly as appealing as Dudley Moore was, but also what it's making fun of isn't drunken alcoholism just hysterical. Well, no, it's really kind of not.
And what I think that's one thing that changed in between. It came out in 81 and then Arthur 2 came out in 88. And I think it's in those years, a lot changed about how we dealt with, I mean, there was Mothers Against Drunk Driving. There was a lot of things that came out about alcoholism. It wasn't funny anymore to laugh at the drunk person. But in 1981, it still was. So it was, and Dudley was brilliant and she was great in it. And it was a fine, funny movie at the time. It's hard to watch now.
And their chemistry was great because she is a really good actor. Well,
that brings us to the latest thing I've seen her in is she was in the series Arrested Development.
So funny.
She was absolutely brilliant in that. And she plays a woman who has whatever that disease is where you don't have any balance.
Yeah.
And what is it called?
I have no idea.
There's a word, and we'd both laugh if we heard it. Anyway, she was hysterical.
So funny.
And her timing was right, as it had always been. She was able, and you sit there and you go, you have to have a sense of humor about yourself in order to do this kind of thing. And she was spot on. And I just sat there and went, okay, this is why she's a diva, and that's why she still is. And again, it goes back to what I was saying, survivorship.
Yep.
Is that you survive all of the stuff and you still find a way to come out at the end laughing your ass off. Now, another thing about the whole divas, if we look at the three divas so far that we've talked about, is the fact that I think it's because they're such big personalities and so strong, the men in their life just can't keep up, and so they don't ever stay married.
Yeah.
Now, in Liza's case, she married 2 gay men.
Yes. As did her mother before her.
Correct. That's always going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And she has no kids, but she's married 4 times. And, of course, Peter Allen was that show,
The Boy from Oz.
The Boy from Oz is on, and so
she was portrayed in that.
She's portrayed
that musical.
in that musical.
Interestingly, by an actress named Stephanie J. Block, who you know what her next job is going to be.
Oh wait, I know this, but I don't remember.
She's playing Cher.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, there's a musical coming out about Cher, and she's going to be Cher. Well, actually, 3 women are going to play Cher, but she plays the middle Cher.
Okay.
Stephanie J. Block, who I saw on stage do falsettos recently, played Liza in The Boy from Oz. Now, Peter Allen, Hugh Jackman as Peter Allen was the center of that show.
Yes.
Liza was kind of a minor character because the story went post his coming out to where he was this big fabulous gay guy, and Liza was kind of the ex-wife, but treated well. I understand by the show. I didn't see it, but I understand that it was a very sympathetic portrayal. Why do we love Liza? I hear a lot that really, really good performers make it look effortless, right? And I think that there is some truth to that. When I talked about why I loved Kevin Kline so much when I saw him on stage in that Noel Coward piece that I saw him do, Present Laughter. And we talked about Alan Rickman recently and how he sometimes made it look too easy, and that maybe it was why he didn't get some of the accolades. Liza, when I saw her live those 3 times, did not make it look easy. She didn't. She was working her ass off, but she had the talent to back it up. Mm-hmm. And so when I left that theater, all 3 times that I saw her, even though these tickets were not cheap, and even though you saw the amount of people that were in this room, she was hauling in some cash for doing these shows, but she was working hard for it.
Yes.
She never rested and just allowed herself to be like, well, I'm Liza Minnelli. Aren't you just lucky that I showed up?
Well, again, I think that goes to the diva thing. They're always working, always pushing forward.
But the work ethic behind it, I was so appreciative of just how fucking hard she was working every time she walked out on stage. And I think that she did that no matter what she was doing, even when doing Arrested Development, where she did make that kind of comedy look easy. But, but anybody who knows what they're doing knows that was so difficult to do, and that she's so good.
Yes, definitely.
She lives in my heart. I love Liza. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about one more diva to round out our quartet for Divas 2018.
Talking about divas.
Yep.
This is our last diva.
So we've been through Eartha Kitt, Cher, Liza Minnelli. One of these things is not like the other.
Number 4 is not going to be exactly like the other.
Who is it?
RuPaul.
Love her.
Yes. Or him. He does not care about pronouns.
He doesn't.
She does not. See how I go? See what I did there?
Although she doesn't ever ask to go by the them, their, they thing. But either he or she.
She does not care what
is fine.
It's not an issue. That is not what's important.
Because most of us know Ru, or were introduced to Ru when Ru presents as female. Ru is the leading. No one can touch Ru in the area of pop culture under the title drag queen.
No.
Ru is it.
Yep.
Built an empire around this. I remember seeing Ru for the first time on MTV. Did a song called Supermodel.
Yes.
And was doing this thing. And very soon after was featured on Beavis and Butthead. Beavis and Butthead, remember them? They actually had a show, right, where it was these 2 cartoons who were watching, and the show, when it was a show, they were just watching music videos on their couch and just providing stupid-ass commentary to what they were watching. And I remember that, they did a bit where RuPaul, Supermodel of the World, was on there, and Beavis thought that she was hot. And Butthead's whole thing was like, Beavis, that's a guy. And then just laughed at him for no, and the 2 of them would fight. And that was like the early 90s. So drag was not necessarily a big part of the mainstream in the early 90s. It was
not mainstream at all.
But Ru was out there from the very beginning.
And so RuPaul was born in San Diego.
As was I.
Were you born in San Diego?
I was born in San Diego, California.
You with stuff in common with famous people. He was named, his mother, Ernestine Charles, named Ru from Roux, R-O-U-X.
Like making a gumbo?
Correct. She's from Louisiana.
Okay.
So that is where the roux came from. It was from, you're exactly right, from gumbo.
Wow, he got named after soup. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. But, yeah, it's RuPaul. I mean, yeah. He's got 3 sisters. And at 15, they moved to Atlanta, Georgia to study performing arts. So he kind of knew from an early age that he wanted to be in showbiz.
Yeah, he was in showbiz before the move to Atlanta. His very first, in my notes here, his very first pop culture appearance was on a local Southern California TV show called The American Music Show. He had a band called RuPaul and the U-Hauls,
which is funny.
And they sang a song on TV just in Southern California in 1982.
Yeah.
So I would have been 11 years old.
Now, you were talking about big, if you know drag, and again, RuPaul brought it to the forefront like it is, but Lady Bunny is legendary in drag.
Well, drag queens were the people who were throwing most of the rocks at Stonewall in 1969. So drag as an art form has been around forever. I mean, Flip Wilson did drag,
drag's been, I mean,
drag's been around since Shakespeare, and before.
Right. But the thing, Lady Bunny was there and had the wig stock, and Roux was featured.
From the very beginning.
Correct.
From the very first wig stock,
and you will see on RuPaul's Drag Race sometimes they'll mention her a lot, but she'll be on, and that sort of thing. But I don't know. Do you remember the first time? The first time I saw RuPaul, and I didn't even know I was seeing RuPaul, was in the video Love Shack.
Was Roux in that?
The tall black woman with the big afro dancing. That's RuPaul.
Get the fuck out.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I know. I didn't know it was RuPaul until later, and I'm like, oh, it is RuPaul.
Well, and what we didn't know then, but we know now, is that all the men in the B-52s, they're all gay. So it was really a gay band, and one of the
I did know that,
and one of the but it was never really spoken aloud.
No, they did not.
Kate Pearson is one of the women. She's gay. And Cindy, I don't think Cindy is gay, but Cindy was Ricky Wilson's brother, who was a member of the sister. Yeah. Ricky was her brother. He died of AIDS.
Yes.
She left the band for a little while, but then came back.
Right.
She took a little time to grieve, and then she came back. But I mean, the B-52s in the Atlanta area were a staple of the gay community. Like, this was a gay band.
Right.
When Rock Gloucester became a hit, it just became like, oh, they're ironic, they're cool, they're hip. No one ever talked about them being gay because you couldn't. It was the 80s.
Right.
But yeah, by the time Love Shack came around, I think we all kind of had a clue. And if you didn't know it, just pay attention and watch the video, because that's a big gay house party.
Yeah.
I didn't know Roux was in it.
But that is Roux
That's fascinating.
Well. So next time you see that, you'll see her. But again, we come back to this diva. Why is diva this person who has the genitalia of a man, but makes living as dressed as a woman? Why are we putting it on a list? Because it fits. Because there are some themes in being a diva that go beyond what genitalia you were born with.
Sure. And the level of camp, but then also the fabulosity that you bring to it that matches that level of camp.
He kept pushing through. She kept pushing through. He wanted to be a singer, and I think that was the big one. The first one was Supermodel.
Supermodel of the World was the debut album in 1993.
But the single Supermodel, You Better Work. I remember that.
Yeah.
And that was just fun. And basically, that's RuPaul keeps continuing putting more out there.
Yeah. And then a year later, Elton John, who we all now know is gay as well, made a duets album.
Right.
Made up of a lot of songs. And I think, was this the one where George Michael and he duetted on, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, which was not a duet when he originally did it.
Correct.
A song that was a duet from the very beginning was Don't Go Breaking My Heart.
Wasn't that Kiki D? Wasn't that who sang it?
Or Tammy somebody. Maybe it was Kiki D. I don't remember. Anyway, he sang Don't Go Breaking My Heart with somebody. When he did the duets album, he invited Roux to sing Don't Go Breaking My Heart with him on his new kind of album full of duets.
Which is huge. That's a huge thing.
It is.
That's a huge thing, because that's putting the drag, right in front of real life, everyday guy from Ohio.
Yeah, and having Ru actually fill the shoes of a female performer, you know, and having, but really when you listen to the song, you know, when you hear Ru sing, it's a man's voice. You know, when you see him sing and all the performance, it's very much a drag, fabulous, over the top kind of a thing. But when you just listen to Elton and Ru sing that song together, it's two men singing together. Don't Go Breaking My Heart.
Now, one thing, so we did not say this when we were talking about it. It was Cher at one point was one of the faces for MAC Cosmetics, I believe. RuPaul also face of MAC Cosmetics. Again, huge, because this is a drag person. And that's the thing is, so Drag Race was created and it brought just the whole society.
Yeah. Before Drag Race, though, I want to talk about three little things. He made some movies. He was in Spike Lee's Crooklyn in 1994 opposite Alfre Woodard. He showed up in the Brady Bunch movie as a drag queen that gives Jan some advice about how to be herself, which was great. And then he had a little cameo along with every other drag queen in the world in Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar.
I remember in Brady Bunch, I'm sorry, because I just had this moment, because they're sitting there and there's another family there that's black. And the little girl's like, Moesha, Moesha, Moesha. Just like Jan was going,
Marsha, Marsha, Marsha. Yep.
Remember
Very
that?
funny.
Okay, sorry.
And RuPaul gives Jan this little pep talk about, you know, you're different and you're not Marsha, but that's okay. You need to be you, which is a beautiful sentiment coming from a big black drag queen.
Yes. So anyway, so then the next step was RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh my God. When my Facebook feed goes crazy whenever there's a finale of this show.
I didn't start catching it until season 2.
Okay.
It was on Logo.
Yep.
And I think I fell into it. Didn't know what it was. Was flipping channels, found it, fell in love with it.
Yep.
And have watched every season since. And now it's on VH1, which also tells you more mainstream.
Yep.
Than ever. So last year the All-Star season was the first, this last All-Star season was the first time it was on VH1. And that is a huge thing. And again, mainstream media.
But Logo is having some problems. VH1 offered Ru a lot of money and said, bring it over here. You'll be in more markets. You'll get more of a share. So many people watch Drag Race. It's not just a show for the gay community. Well,
and there have been some spin-offs of it. She says there's Drag Race. Then there is the All-Stars, which she did after there had been several drag races.
So All-Stars is made up of contestants who didn't win in previous seasons, but were fan favorites, so let's bring them back.
That's exactly right. There's also Drag Race Untucked.
Which is more of a reality. That's more of
it's reality. It's basically what's going.
That's a non-competitive reality show. It's all the backstage drama.
It's if you watch Drag Race and then you can watch this after it. It's like what happened behind the scenes while you were seeing what was going on in front of the scenes.
Which I'll be honest, I never liked Untucked.
I don't watch it much. I because it feels contrived.
Everything I don't like about reality television, I feel like Untucked is kind of that. What the best of reality TV to me are competitive reality shows where you actually have to have talent.
Yeah.
The two reality shows that I have absolutely no embarrassment about loving are Project Runway and RuPaul's Drag Race. Okay. Because you have to have talent.
But let me tell you that my favorite spinoff of RuPaul's Drag Race is Drag You.
I remember Drag You.
They only did it like maybe 3 different seasons. Yeah. And it was where they would get straight women.
Yep.
And they would have drag queens help. Make them over.
Yeah.
Taught them how to walk, taught them how to present themselves, all of this. I loved that show. I thought it was great because all it was just uplifting. Yeah. That's all it was.
It was Queer Eye for the Straight Girl with totally a lot of camp.
And it was also nice to see the drag queens in a different, non-competitive, I'm trying to fight for the camera. They were just being real with these women.
Well, we've talked about divas. There's drag queens. There's this emphasis on, a lot of them, the stereotype can be very, very mean girl, right? The drag queens I've actually known in my life have just been, for the most part, funny, and they can be bitchy, but not in a cruel way, in just a funny way. They'll say bitchy things to make you laugh, and they'll even say bitchy things about you to your face, but somehow it's delivered with love that you just have to laugh at whatever it is they've just said to you.
So RuPaul just got this year Walk of Fame.
Yes. March of 2018, he got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Very exciting.
With a little television icon under his name. So, they'll do that on the Walk of Fame. You'll either get a movie camera or a record or a
whatever
TV
is, I guess, the biggest thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you are somebody like Cher or Liza who's done it all, it's kind of like, I don't know, does Cher have one? What kind of symbol does she have?
I'm sure
I wouldn't
she
even
does.
know.
I don't know.
But usually, but it's Drag Race that really brought Ru to that kind of next level. And it's interesting. I was watching, I do a little research. I'm a professional podcaster.
Of course,
Stacey.
you are.
I do my research.
Nobody is saying that you're not.
I do my research.
Okay, there's some that say that.
And no one says that. But I was just kind of going through, I went on YouTube and I just typed in RuPaul to see what would show up. And one of the things I watched, and I actually watched the entire thing, it was an hour-long conversation between RuPaul and Oprah.
Yeah.
And Oprah was interviewing RuPaul about just his whole nature of, his philosophy on life. And what he said that she loved, and I kind of loved too, is that we're all born naked and the rest is drag. Which is a great kind of way of kind of saying, look, we all put on stuff that becomes our persona. And whether or not you think you're just norm from the Midwest, when you put on those blue jeans and that flannel shirt, that is a form of, it's a costume.
Correct.
Because we all make these choices, and our choices determine who we can be. And Ru's whole philosophy is, if you could be anything, why don't you be the most fabulous, outrageous person you could possibly think of being? And it's so interesting that he would say that, because in this conversation, he was out of drag. He was just in a suit, a fabulous suit, by the way, a very black and white paisley kind of nutty suit.
Yeah, he loves suits, and they're good.
But he can be very soft-spoken and very down-to-earth when he's not wearing a wig that, kind of reaches the sky, and, heels for days. And he was just this really lovely, sweet person. And I see him as on a mission to, of course, advance his career and make money, because no one goes into showbiz to, hoping to be poor. But really, there's this other thing about him, and I see it coming through at Drag Race as well. He's really just trying to advance people and saying, listen, there are people out there in the world who you might label as a freak, but they are lovely, beautiful people, and let me show you who they are.
Well, and I think what he did is that he decided, so this drag race thing, this drag thing, this phenomenon, let's see how far I can go, and then let's see how many people I can take with.
Yeah.
And so when you watch Drag Race, which is one reason I think it's compelling and why it's on season 10 right now. Not
even including all the All-Stars.
No, exactly. Is because at the back of it, when there is critique or at the end, when he saying goodbye to somebody or whatever, before the Shantae, you stay, or sashay away, there is a moment of positivity and of uplifting of that. And he says, you are, the queen that, you can be as big a queen as you want to be. You can be whatever it is you want to be. Now go and do that. And it's very positive. And so I think that's part of it, is to say, I may not have had this person to tell me that I'm okay, that I'm this weird thing that does this, but I'm going to be that person for you. Yeah. And there's a reason that in most of the queens that are on the show call her Mama Ru. Yeah. And I guess that if I had to go to what do I like about, what is it about, that's it. It's that positive. Yes, I'm ambitious. I got that diva. I'm going to do this, but I'm going to bring some of you with me too. Yeah. I'm going to bring, come on with me. And opens up opportunities that they never, ever would have had before. Yeah. And I love that.
I think, you nailed it. That's exactly what I think about Ru as well. And that's why I love Ru. That's why I love all of them.
Well, there's a perseverance, and there is this survivorness of they're going to no matter what. Yeah. No matter what. Hashtag she persisted.
Yeah. And you know what? You don't have to be a gay man to love Eartha Kitt or Cher or Liza or RuPaul.
Stacey sits here.
Exactly. But if you enjoy, if you want that message that, strength can look a lot of different ways, and strength can look gorgeous in a pair of high heels and still bust your balls, then divas are a place for you to kind of go and find some refuge in.
Also, and especially the examples that we talked about today, if you just want some interesting entertainment, baby.
Yeah, because the other thing about divas are talented.
Exactly.
Somebody who has got no talent whatsoever is never going to achieve the pantheon of
Correct.
divahood that we're talking about in these shows. I can't even remember who the divas we talked about the last time. I think we did talk about
Ross.
Gaga. We talked about Diana Ross. We did talk about Judy and Marilyn Monroe.
Yep.
Were the four that we did in our
All talented, all
exactly
good entertainer.
all
Yep.
and that has to be said. Additional about Marilyn, people don't understand how talented she was. That was our big thing last year. We have a whole show about the four of them that are still available. Yep. So go back and look at Divas 2017. Go check out some of the work that you might not be aware of when it comes to the four that we talked about today. Happy Pride, everybody! This is Popperation. I'm Eric.
I'm Stacey.
You've been listening to Popperation with Eric and Stacey, the podcast that dissects popular culture one bloody organ at a time. Subscribe today on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other podcast listening site or app. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Popperation Room. Check out our website at popperationroom.com for all of the podcasts, our blog, swag, and games. Until next time, when we're back in the scrubs.